If you were unaware of this practice prior to watching this video, I'm sorry to burst your merry bubble, but here's why you would have wanted to avoid execution during the ancient Persian Empire. In 500 BCE, a nightmare-inducing form of torture was invented. This method was called Scaphism, also known as the boats. The etymology for the word Scaphism comes from the Greek word scaphe, which means bowl or grave, which makes a lot of sense because the accused was placed between either two hollowed out logs or boats with only their heads, lower half of their legs, and the lower half of their arms sticking out. They were then force-fed milk and honey until they exploded from gastrointestinal distress into the bottom of the boat. Parts of the body that remained sticking out of the boat were then drizzled with honey, and they were set adrift in stagnant water, somehow tethered to the shore. The human waste and sweet smell of honey would attract bugs and other vermin who would swarm, biting and burrowing into the boat's gaps to feed on not only the waste but the flesh of the accused. Those vermin would nibble on what body parts they could get to, eventually burrowing deep into the crevices of the boat where they would chomp away at vital organs, including the skin. It would be either infection or the damage to these vital organs that would eventually lead to the end of these victims. Now, as someone who has an extreme phobia of bugs, that sounds like an absolute nightmare. This method of execution was reserved for the most depraved of criminals, like ruthless murderers or traitors. Therefore, it wasn't necessarily a means of execution that was used all the time. No tangible proof remains after 2 millennia. How we know about this terrible punishment is through the writings of Greek-Roman philosopher Plutarch. Plutarch wrote about the execution of a soldier named Mithridates. Mithridates killed the brother of King Artaxerxes II, which was really a help to the king because his brother Cyrus the Younger was trying to overthrow the king. So the king was somewhat thankful. However, he told Mithridates he could never speak of the murder. The secret needed to stay between the two men. Unfortunately, a few days later, Mithridates got a little sloshed and ended up boastfully spilling the beans at a banquet. When King Artaxerxes heard about this slip of the tongue, the soldier was sentenced to death by Scaphism for his treachery. And I'm sure as a soldier, the guy was pretty lithe and healthy, which would ultimately be his detriment because he lasted 17 days between the boats before finally transitioning. Plutarch wrote of the king's proclamation, Mithridates should be put to death in boats, which execution is after the following manner. Taking 2 boats framed exactly to fit and answer each other, they lie down in one of them, the malefactor that suffers upon his back. Then, covering it with the other, and so setting them together that the heads, hands, and feet of him are left outside, and the rest of his body lies shut up within. They offer him food, and if he refuses to eat, they force him to do it by pricking his eyes. Oh God. Then after he has eaten, they drench him with a mixture of milk and honey. Plutarch went into gory detail about how the honey would aid the skin in blistering after hours in the sun, about how the flies were the first to be interested, but as the boat filled with excrement, other vermin would crawl into the accused orifices and chomp away at flesh and vital organs. In the 12th century, we get another mention of this brutal practice from Joannes Zanaras when he writes of the ancient Persians that they outvie all other barbarians in the horrid cruelty of their punishments. I'm gonna have to disagree because drawing and quartering was a thing. Iron Maiden may have been a thing. There's the Blood Eagle. I mean, there's a lot of shit going on here. Like, really, just humans are real creative when it comes to killing each other. Let's put it that way. He was really only taking this opinion from the writings of Plutarch. While he explained the process, there was no nuance to the information. He pulled it directly from the only source regularly cited for use of this execution method. Now, there are some who are skeptical Scaphism even existed. Their skepticism comes from the fact Plutarch's writings did not occur until centuries after Mithridates. King Artaxerxes and Cyrus the Younger had been long since buried. After all, Plutarch is notoriously inaccurate as his preference was to tell a good story and not so much to tell the simple truth. So it's very possible these were just the sick musings of an artist rather than accurate historical accounts. While there's a chance Scaphism did not exist, there are still those who are not skeptical and genuinely believe that this was a rarely practiced execution method out of the ancient Persian empires. Since there are several millennia separating us from the gruesome practice, I guess we'll never really know, but you can tell me what you think below. Also, if you have more information about this topic that I missed, please feel free to inform us in the comments. In the meantime, have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.